Okay, picture this. You're at a super busy train station, right? You're desperate to catch your ride, you step onto the escalator ready to just sprint to the top, only to find some bozo standing dead center in the walking lane, completely blocking your path. You're breathing down their neck, just praying they'll move, but they don't. Now you're stuck going up in agonizing slow motion. Welcome to this explainer on what we call the escalator paradox.
So let's dive right into this universally annoying situation. I mean, we've all been there, feeling that bubbling, absolute rage as the noble walker who's being thwarted by a stationary obstacle. But before we let that frustration totally take over, we actually need to introduce a highly counterintuitive reality about this everyday commute struggle.
Because what if you, the noble walker, are actually the problem? No way, right? Well, it turns out that the universally accepted law of stand on the right, walk on the left is mathematically flawed. In fact, at peak transit times, if everyone literally just stood completely still, side by side, we would actually all get to the top way faster.
And this stand right, walk left habit, it feels like an absolute constant globally, doesn't it? It's deeply ingrained in the US, the UK, China, and France. Interestingly though, places like Australia and Singapore actually flip it. They stand on the left and walk on the right, probably for the exact same reason their toilets allegedly swirl the other way. But seriously, why do we even have this rigid rule in the first place?
Well, that brings us to Section 1, London's Diagonal Legacy.
The mechanics of these early machines are absolutely fascinating. So early London escalators were pretty primitive by modern standards, or just mega busted, if you prefer. They didn't have flat steps or those combed endings that modern escalators use to, prevent your Crocs from being devoured at the top. Instead, they ended with these physical diagonal barriers called shunts. And these shunts essentially forced all passengers to offload on the left side.
So back in the late 1800s, because everyone was being aggressively funneled to the left by these shunts, the left side naturally evolved into the fast lane by the early 1900s. Walkers could just exit via the inside corner much more efficiently without having to cross over the people who were standing still. Now, by the 1920s, these physical shunts were completely replaced with safer designs. But the habit? That became a permanent part of our collective psyche. We still strictly follow it over a century later.
Which leads perfectly into Section 2, the math of space.
So a 2002 London Underground study proved that this lingering habit is essentially just a massive battle over personal space. Think about it. When commuters stand still, they typically leave a tight, compact, one-step gap between themselves and the person right in front of them. But walkers? Walkers are totally different. Because you've got feet swinging around and you're moving at a faster pace, walkers instinctively require a sprawling two-step gap.
Okay, let's really dive into the math here to see the real-world impact. On a 100-step escalator, that gap difference is actually huge. You can easily fit 50 people in the standing lane, but only about 33 people in the walking lane. Now, during really busy times, the standing side handles about 54 passengers per minute, while the walking side handles 66. So, looking at that per minute throughput, you'd logically think walking wins, right? Well, that's only true if people actually fill up that lane and walk.
And that brings us to Section 3, the 60-foot rule.
Because, sure, everyone enthusiastically struts up a short 4-foot escalator, but there is an exact mathematical tipping point for when that motivation completely stops, 18.43 meters, or roughly 60 feet. On any escalator taller than that, people simply get too lazy to climb. It's just human nature. And when that happens, dedicating half the escalator's space to a walking lane actively ruins your throughput, mostly because the lane just sits there mostly empty. You would actually move way more people per minute by having everyone stand on both sides, literally one person on every single step. And this massive inefficiency isn't just some theoretical math problem on a whiteboard. It heavily impacts daily commutes in major transit hubs all over the world. We're talking New York, Delhi, Istanbul. We are sacrificing massive system-wide efficiency every single day just so a handful of people can optionally walk if they feel like it.
So moving on to Section 4, why bureaucracy always wins.
So the crucial question is, if standing on both sides is mathematically superior for these large transit systems, why don't authorities just enforce it? Well, actually, they tried. Let's fire through some of these specific, failed bureaucratic attempts to fix our stubborn human behavior. In Toronto, officials straight up removed the walking signs entirely. In Hong Kong, they literally hired safety ambassadors to direct people. And in London, they deployed these explicit recorded announcements telling commuters to just stand on both sides. And the result across all of these major global cities? People just wouldn't do it.
Humans are incredibly stubborn. That 2002 London Underground study ultimately just threw in the towel. They concluded that our 100-year-old habit from the shunt era is simply too difficult to enforce. It really seems this illogical etiquette is here to stay, even if it objectively makes our commutes mathematically slower.
Now, it might feel like it takes an agonizing 25 minutes to stubbornly walk up a massive 200-foot escalator, but you know what else you can do in exactly 25 minutes? You can bake delicious, fresh sourdough bread straight from frozen, all thanks to our sponsor, Wild Grain. And let's be honest, that is a much, much better use of your time.
Wild Grain makes it incredibly easy to have amazing baked goods delivered directly to your door. Unlike standard grocery store options, Wild Grain utilizes a slow fermentation process. What does that mean? It means it's easier on your belly and far richer in nutrients. Plus, if you use the link in our description, you get $30 off your first box. And as a crazy bonus, they are throwing in free croissants for life. You really can't beat that level of logistical efficiency. So, the next time you find yourself stuck on a massive escalator, just breathing down someone's neck, ask yourself, are you truly in a hurry, or are you just fighting a losing battle against logistical efficiency? Keep that in mind on your next commute. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you guys next time.